Okay, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And alhamdulillah. Wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulihi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsani ila yawm ad-din wa ba'd. So alhamdulillah, we are here today on our second week. The text that we're covering is called Jawhar at-Tawhid. And it's by Imam Ibrahim al-Laqani al-Maliki al-Ashari. So last week we began the text with the intro, inshallah. So before we begin, has anyone ever covered this text before? Besides Mr. Bey? Nobody covered this text before?
No.
Okay. All right, so last week we kind of did an intro. So we'll just do a little review for those who weren't here. So this is a basic text on Aqidah, and Jawhar at-Tawhid is translated as the precious jewel of divine unity. And it's by Imam Ibrahim al-Laqani al-Maliki al-Ashari. So what was one of the things about this poem, because he wrote this book of Aqidah in a poem form. What was some of the things that we can recall from last week, or the week before?
Well, the beginning part was a whole introduction.
Yeah. No, it's something specific I'm looking about as far as the poem. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Shakia.
Hey, Aziza.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm trying to put the mic on. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, welcome to the class, inshallah. Yeah, while I'm doing the discourse, unless you're speaking, could you please mute your mics because we are recording. All right. So let me just a review that Imam al-Laqani, he wrote this poem at the time he was only 17 years old. He was only 17 years old, so he was young. And, as we mentioned the week before, many times when scholars write books and the commentary or the sharh of the book is usually by someone later on, like scholars will come after them and look at their works and then write commentary, super commentaries. He actually wrote a commentary to his own work, So he, once we complete this book, you'll see why it's called Jawhar at-Tawhid, because it's really a jewel that he put together. And it's dealing with belief. So we talked about Aqidah. We talked about the Basmalah. Give me something on the Basmalah. What is the Basmalah?
It's Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
Yes, when you say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Well, when you say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, what are you really saying? Because Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is not a complete sentence.
It says that do I read from my notes, right?
You can, as a review.
Okay. Listen to the Bismillah. It contains every important matter. And nothing good or beneficial should begin without saying it, and it's incomplete without saying the name of Allah.
Okay.
And then there were 4 different meanings.
Okay. All right. So when you say Bismillah, you're really saying Abatu, I begin, or Badatu, Bismillah. I begin in the name of Allah. So when you say in the name of Allah, anything that you put the Bismillah before has to be something that's righteous, something that's pure, and nothing that's haram. And we mentioned a hadith that says that anything that does not begin with the name of Allah, that it is deficient. All right. So real quick, Imam al-Laqani, where is he from? Where's the place? Because in their names, it tells you everything. His name is Imam Ibrahim al-Laqani al-Maliki al-Ashari.
He's from Egypt?
Yes, he's from Egypt in a town called Laqan. Al-Maliki al-Ashri tells you what madhab he followed, the Maliki madhab, and the school of Aqidah, which is the Ashari Aqidah. All right, we'll review it, but when we mention these authors and these scholars, I always ask you what year they died. It's very important to know the year that they died. So we'll do a review, but I'm not going to do it today because I want to try to stay on schedule. But he died in the year 1041 AH, or in the current time, 1632. So in the 17th century he lived. He wrote a book. How many lines of poetry is in the book? Anybody remember? How many lines of poetry is in the book? Does everyone have a copy of the book?
144.
No.
Yeah, 144 lines of poetry covering the basic aspects of Aqidah. So whoever doesn't have a copy of the book, you can just put your email in the comment section, and I'll make sure it's a PDF copy that I'll send to you. Okay, so it's 144 lines covering the basics of Aqidah. And so last week we covered lines 1 through 4, which was an introduction. All right, and so we covered the meaning of Tawhid. What is the meaning of Tawhid? Give me what you know so far, because many of you, this is your first time. What is the meaning of Tawhid?
Is that like describing the oneness of Allah?
Yeah, well, yeah. The one who said that?
Bahira.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum. What's your name, sis?
Wa alaikum salam. Bahira.
Okay, Tahira. Okay. So yeah, the oneness of Allah, and well, since you all weren't present the week before, and some of you are here for the first time, and well, we'd like to welcome you. One of the meanings that we were looking for, that Allah is, it means the true belief in oneness and separating Allah, his pre-eternality, his kingdom, from contingencies, hawadith. So meaning that this is what Tawheed is the true belief that Allah is totally separate from everything, and he's one, and he's unique in his oneness. And in 3 categories that he is absolutely, has absolute one in, complete oneness. What are those 3 categories?
Is it
I gave the English word. So
I
we
have,
okay, go ahead.
I have Dean as one.
No.
No. Okay.
His essence, that he's absolute one in his essence, his that, his sifat, his attributes, and his a'mal, his actions. All right. So that's what Allah has absolute oneness in. His that, his essence, mean that he is unlike anything else, and that means his self. So when we say the that of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is something that the human mind can't really conceive. So he is one in his that and his sifat and his nasa a'mal, his af'al, his actions. All right. So this is just a little review, but we'll go over it again just from last week because a lot of us weren't here. What's the definition of deen?
Is it the way of doing something?
Yeah, a deen is a way of doing something. But we gave a short definition and a long definition the week before.
I think the short one is obedience, worship, reward, and account.
No, those are some of the lexical meanings, like the linguistic meanings. So when we say deen, that is connected to worship, is connected to obedience, is connected to earning rewards, and is connected to hisab. But the short meaning we gave is that those rulings which the lawgiver legislated upon the tongue of his prophet. So everything that the Prophet ﷺ related to us is known as deen. And then the longer meaning, we said that is the deen means that which has been divinely established, steering the possessor of sound intellect through a praiseworthy choice to that which is inherently good. So it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala giving us the ability to be good by giving us the opportunity to accept the religion of Islam. All right. So last week we covered lines 1 through 4, and there was an introduction. So I want to make sure we get all our time for the class today. So we covered about the praise of Allah, sending salutations on his prophet, his family, his companions. We talked about who his family was. Who is Ahlul Bayt? Question. This is another review question. Who is considered Ahlul Bayt?
I'm scared to answer. My notes don't seem to add up with what your answers are.
Okay.
The descendants of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Yeah, the descendants. Is there specific descendants of the Prophet Islam we talking about? Because we discussed a couple different.
So would it be his family and his tribes? We talking about
yeah. So
the Hashem and the Muttalib tribes?
yeah, the Hashemites.
Ahlul Kisah.
Yeah, the Muttalib. What is Ahlul Kisah?
Those are his direct descendants, right? His grandchildren, his children.
No, Ahlul Kisah is special people. There's some specific people who are considered Ahlul Kisah, and that's a little that's a specification inside Ahlul Bayt. We gave a hadith, huh?
Ahlul Kisah, you were asking.
Yes.
That included Ali, Fatima, Hassan, and Hussein.
Yes. And what was the hadith that we said we mentioned? You remember?
It's the hadith of the cloak. I can't quote it directly, but
yeah, that's it. Yeah, Ahsan. There's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, one time he gathered Ali, Fatima, Hassan, and Hussein under a cloak, and he said that this is my family. And whoever like another narrator said, whoever harms them, they harm me, and stuff like that. So that is a specific, and we know the Ahlul Bayt is the lineage from Ali and Fatima. May Allah be pleased with both of them. And then, but we also mentioned that some of the views, it says that the lineage in particular is the family of the Prophet, and some say that even every believer in general is considered like the family of the Prophet if they're adhering to the proper beliefs and stuff like that, you know. And then we mentioned last week that there are people today who are direct descendants of, you know, Ali and Fatima through Hassan and Hussein, and we showed a chart last week, the week before, and so we'll go back over that another time as we review. But I want to get started on the class, inshallah. Are there any questions so far?
Can I make a comment to everybody? That we got to sit with a sister who was a direct descendant from the Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam last weekend in Atlantic City. At the class with Sheikh Samir's wife, and I believe Fahima, she's from the line of Hussein, right?
he said yes.
Okay, let me do that.
Yeah. So some of the Prophet's lineage, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they are still intact, and they can you know, they can trace their lineage right back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Like, for instance, in these days we have like the 34th like, what is it, grandson. There are some people who are of that lineage. Some of the ways that you know that they have the name Husseini, they have the names like Ba Alawi, all those kind of names. They are descendants of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you know. Okay, so are there any questions so far before I start the presentation?
No.
Okay, because for those who are tuning in today, I would highly recommend that you go to our YouTube channel and check out the video for the first the first session that we had, because this is the second session. All right. And so that way I want everybody to try to be up to speed, inshallah. Okay, so let me get this here. Okay, can everybody see that? All right. Let me do the slideshow now. Okay, current slide. Okay, so here we have lines 5 and 6. So last week it was the beginning, and we mentioned that all of the stuff that we covered was just an introduction. Anytime you hear someone presenting knowledge of Islam, they start with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulihi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. And then they say wa mina tabihum bi ihsani ila yawmiddin, or different variations. So all of that is the introduction, what we covered, and all of the slides that we covered previously was concerning that. All right, so now we're on lines 5 and 6. So this is where we'll start the actual text, inshallah. So he says here in the poem, and last week, the week before, we played a clip of the poem being recited, and I found another clip where the whole recital is done. It's in like in four videos that you can play. They have it where it's looping over there so you can memorize it. So maybe that'd be a good idea to listen to it. It's all in Arabic, but even if you may have trouble memorizing it, it's good to hear the melody of it, because I'm not even going to attempt to try to do the melody. All right, hold on. I'm getting messed up here. Hold on. No, that's not. Y'all give me a second. I was talking trash about people being tech savvy, and I'm up here messing stuff up. So give me a second. Okay. Okay, everybody can still see that screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let me read that. So it says, وَبَعَدُ فَإِلْمُ بِأَصْلِ دِينِ مُحَتَّمٌ يَحْتَاجُ لِتَبْيِينِ لكن من التأويل كلة الهمم فصار فيه الاختصار ملتزم. All right, so he says to begin, and many times you hear speakers, especially for Jumu'ah, ba'da dalik, and after that, you know, so whatever they said before was the introduction, and then after that, this is what we're going to discuss. So now he talks about that ilm is the foundation, or knowledge of belief is obligatory and requires clarification. However, due to lengthiness of the works and endeavors have become weary, thus brevity has become necessary. So let's go to the next slide. So he talks about knowledge being the asl. So here we have some references, inshallah. So the first one is from Imam Abul Hasan al-Ashari, who died in the year 324 AH. He said that knowledge is that which causes its possessor to become knowledgeable and permits its carrier to act masterfully and perfectly. So this is the purpose of knowledge, that the one who learns it, the one who possesses it, they actually know what they know and they act according to their knowledge. All right. So as you know, in my classes, the names that we give, you should know at least the year that they passed away. So Imam Abu Hasan al-Ashari died in the year 324 AH. So what time frame was he from?
From the time of the 3 generations, time of the Salaf.
Okay, the Salaf Salih, right? So what's the time when the Prophet ﷺ, he said in the hadith, Khairun nas qarni thumma ladina yalunahum thumma ladina yalunahum. He said the best of the people is my generation, then those who follow them, then those who follow them. And this is what we consider as the Salaf Salih, right? The righteous predecessors. And so those two generations, which include all of the four imams, Imam Malik, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Shafi, Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal, and then the two founders of the schools of Aqidah, Imam Abu Hasan al-Ash'ari and Imam Abu Mansur al-Maturidi. So some scholars say that the Salaf al-Salih also extends to the year 300 AH, and then some say 400 AH ends the period of the righteous Salaf. So to include some of those scholars like Imam Abu Hasan al-Ash'ari, who actually lived during the time, because I think he was born in the year 260 or something like that. So he lived during that time, and then he died right in the next century, which would be 400 AH. So 400 AH, some scholars say that's the time at the end of the Salaf. So the next scholar we have is Shaykh al-Islam al-Zakaria al-Ansari, who died in the year 926 AH, or the 16th century at our time, the year 1520. And he said that knowledge is perceiving things as they are, or the ability to which a person is able to perceive things. Perceiving things as they are, or the ability to which a person is able to perceive things. And then we have Imam al-Juwayni, rahimahullah, that he said he died in the year 478 AH, and Imam al-Juwayni was one of the teachers of Imam al-Ghazali. So he said that necessary knowledge, which is called ilm ad-daruri, is gained through any of the five senses that do not require reflection or deduction. And acquired knowledge is ilm muktasab, which requires reflection and deduction, dalil. So here I want you to remember these two phrases, ilm daruri and ilm muktasab. So necessary knowledge, ilm daruri, is gained through any of the five senses. So for instance, you know, if it's cold outside, you don't have to do any research to know that, you know, it's 20 degrees, I got to put on a coat. You know, that is necessary knowledge that comes to you through your senses. You know, it don't really take a rocket science to figure out you can't go outside without a coat, you know.
These children in these hoodies say different.
Yeah, they got sense, but you know, something's going on. You know, I don't know if it's the water, the food, or but you know, but they know that it's cold. You know, they still shiver. You know, their senses tell them you cold. Like, what's wrong with you? Put a coat on. You know, and then they have acquired knowledge, was ilm muktasab, that something that you have to go after. You have to seek this knowledge. And here I put in parentheses dalil. So you need evidence to discuss this kind of knowledge. So any questions on that?
No.
Okay. So I want you to remember these three names and the dates that they passed. Imam Abu Hasan al-Ash'ari, whose name is going to come up quite a bit. Shaykh al-Islam Zakaria al-Ansari. And for those who might not know, that there's a whole list of scholars that had the title Shaykh al-Islam. All right, because many in these times we only hear about one, you know, and that's a whole nother thing. But you know, in these times we always, if you hear Shaykh al-Islam, you hear one name, but there's actually a list of them throughout the ages, you know, and this is one of them, Shaykh al-Islam Zakaria al-Ansari. How many of you ever heard of Shaykh al-Islam Zakaria al-Ansari?
I have.
Okay. Mr. Bay, you're not allowed to speak in the class. No, I'm just joking. Okay, any questions on that before I go to the next slide?
Summary you gave for al-Muktasab, what did you say? You said that it's required through seeking knowledge or studying. What did you say?
About seeking knowledge, Talibul Ilm is you talking about the last class we did?
No, right here. The last definition you said.
Necessary knowledge, ilm daruri, is gained through any of the five senses that do not require reflection or deduction, and ilm muktasab. Ilm muktasab. So it's knowledge that is sought after or acquired or earned. All right. Muktasab means something that is earned, which requires reflection and deduction. So that's when you're discussing knowledge, you have to have your dalil and you have to be able to articulate it. All right. Everybody got that?
Yes.
Okay. Can I go on?
Yes.
All right. All right. So then we have Imam Ghazali, as we mentioned. Imam Juwaini was his teacher, so he gave him the definition of beneficial knowledge. So Imam Ghazali, as you all know, what is his title?
Is he the Hujjatul Islam?
Yeah, Hujjatul Islam. Good. What does Hujjatul Islam mean?
Like a proof or the
Yeah,
proof
Hujjah
of
means like a
Islam.
proof. So this is the name, as you know, when scholars have these names, they didn't get themselves these names. That these are names that people gave them because of the level and the rank that they reached. So they called Imam Al-Ghazali rahimahullah the proof of Islam. You know, that's a lofty title. So it's like, you know, he was the embodiment of Islam being a proof. You know, so and inshallah, maybe in another class we'll go into his biography a little deeper, you know, and we'll definitely be referring to a lot of his works, you know, which was his main body of work, you know, his most famous one.
The revival of Islamic sciences.
Yes.
Ihya Ulumuddin.
Yeah, the Ihya Ulumuddin, or the revival of the Islamic sciences. So this is what's called his magnum opus. That this is like his main project that he did, all of the many works that he's done. You know, may Allah preserve him. So he gave a definition of beneficial knowledge. He said, beneficial knowledge is that which increases you in fear of Allah. It increases your insight into the faults of your ego. It increases you in awareness of how to worship your Lord. It reduces your desire of this world while increasing your longing for the next world. It opens your spiritual insight to the defects of your actions in order to avoid them. So that's a very, and there was some more to this, but it was really long. So I just cut it right there. You know, you can find that some of his works. So in other words, that if knowledge is not doing this for you, it's not knowledge. It's just information that you're learning. So the first thing is to increase fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and more or less paying attention to yourself and your own faults of your ego. Because sometimes, you know, if we're not checking our egos, you know, knowledge can be something that we use as a weapon, you know, because we may know something that somebody might not know, or we might undermine somebody because they're ignorant, or we might not have the patience to deal with someone because they're not knowing. But knowledge should be something that we learn, increases our connection with Allah. And fear here doesn't mean like scared, you know, being in awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because what we're learning about him and, you know, about the necessary knowledge of how to worship him, it makes us feel even lowly than we already are. And that we pay attention to our stuff, pay attention to removing ourselves from this worldly life and increasing our, you know, the next life. And we should always be trying to use this knowledge to repair ourselves, you know. So we ask Allah to give us knowledge that benefits us and that we act by it. I mean, any questions on that?
Nope.
Okay, I'll go to the next one. Okay, so then the next line where he said, and now we're going back to the lines 5 and 6. He said that this knowledge is muhattam, obligatory. So this word means that it's obligatory, compulsory, and necessary. And learning this science of Aqidah is a personal obligation upon every legally responsible person. So which we know as Fard Ain. One, and Mukallaf. What is Mukallaf?
As someone who's come of age, they're at the age of understanding. They've heard the call to Islam. They've reached the pubescent stage in their life.
Yes, that's good. So when a person reaches that age of mukallaf, this knowledge becomes an obligation upon them, and no one is permitted to ignore or to be negligent of it. And so then we talk about this knowledge. He talks about general proofs and detailed proofs. So when we talk about the knowledge that is daruri, and then the knowledge that is in the last slide that we had is the ilm muktasab, acquired knowledge. So we talk about dalil. So that dalil in the muktasab and acquired knowledge has two levels, right? So dalil ijmali is fard ayn, obligation. So everyone who is mukallaf should know the fard ayn about general proofs. So a general proof that we know, kul huwa Allahu ahad, right? Every one of us, of sound mind and body, being of age, we should know what surah that's found in, right?
Yes.
What surah is it found in?
Surah Al-Ikhlas.
Okay, what number is that?
Oh, is it 114?
112.
112.
Well, how many ayahs does it contain?
3.
3?
I mean, 4.
Oh, no.
I had to recite it real quick, bro. Mashallah.
Okay.
I first sip of coffee just went in.
Alhamdulillah.
Sister Callie, this is why I missed you last week.
I know.
I need backup.
Yeah, you need
I
some
got you.
assistance. You need somebody to bail you out.
I got you.
Okay. So general proofs are dalil ijmali fard ayn, that every one of us should know in general, you know, where we could find Quran about Allah being one, and there are numerous places. And then there's detailed proofs. So dalil tafsili, and this is a fard kifaya. So dalil tafsili is for the scholars and people of knowledge who are able to go and know the proofs and memorize them and be able to articulate them. And so we have the proof here that all of us should know in Surah Muhammad, ayah 19, and it says, فَأَلَمْ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ. So that's an example of dalil ijmali. All right. So that's the obligatory knowledge that we have to know. So in this ayah, Allah tells the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, فَأَلَمْ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ. Know that there is no God except Allah who's subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here, this is when we say, it says fa'alam, this is a command. If this is a command for the Prophet sallallahu who that no one will ever know better than him that there is no God but Allah, because he was sent with the message, then what about for us? What is obligatory for us? You know, what is obligatory for us? And, you know, living centuries later and being exposed to all types of deviant beliefs and understandings and things like that. So it's even more of an obligation now to know the detailed proofs and the regular proofs about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Any questions on that?
No.
All right, so here you will need to know, if I ask you on a test, for instance, what is the meaning of the word muhattam? You know, what is mukallaf? And I say if there's two types of proofs, if I say, you know, that there's dalil muktasab, that there's acquired proofs. So it's general and detail. What is general and detail? So no, at least English, you know, I know sometimes we may have some issues with some Arabic terms, but dalil ijmali and dalil tafsili. So dalil ijmali is a foreign ayn. Every one of us should know general proofs of why we believe what we believe. And then there's a fard kifaya that for among us, somebody's supposed to undertake this task. So what is fard kifaya for our new students who came, who might not know what fard kifaya is? It says communal obligation, but give us something else that we learned prior.
Well, fard kifaya that's the obligation upon the community to perform a certain act. And if someone, for instance, is not available for a janazah, for instance, then someone in the community has to perform the janazah, or else it'll be considered a sin on the community, or it'll be, you know, against the community.
Okay, another quick trivia. Good. Another quick trivia. So sometimes a fard kifaya can become a fard ayn. What does that mean?
That means that if you're available, for instance, to assist with washing a body, which is a fard ayn.
Washing the body is fard ayn?
No, it's a fard kifaya. I'm sorry, which is it's a part of an obligation for the person who's passed, the ghusl for the person who passed. So if a live person, meaning, is not able to, or if you're able to assist and you don't assist, then that can become something against you because you did not do it and it needed to be done in the community.
Okay, good.
Did I say too much? Probably did.
No, that's good. So in other words, if there's ever a case where there's someone who is supposed to undertake the task as a Fard Kifaya to relieve the community of the obligation, if they're not around, you become their obligation. I put a post up that I heard the other day from somebody. It says, he said his grandmother told him that, you know, if you look around and you can't find the example that you're looking for, you become the example. So this is similar to that, you know. So, and in other words, it's something that all of us should be learning outside of our Fard Ain, that there should come a time where we're able to go to other levels. Like, especially if we're talking Aqidah, we should know general proofs, but we should be studying particular proofs too, you know. Any questions on that?
No.
Okay, I'll go to the next slide. Okay, so then just a clarification about what Aqidah is. Another part, when we talk about detailed proofs, one of the names of Aqidah and Tawhid and Usuluddin is Ilm Kalam. All right. So many times you might hear this as people distorting this and saying that this is philosophy and Muslims, you know, engaged in philosophy, but that's not what Ilm Kalam means. Here I put rational theology, but Ilm Kalam literally means the science of rhetoric. The science of rhetoric or kalam or speech, or the science or which enables the student to affirm and rationally prove the beliefs of Islam and to answer any objections which may be raised against them. So if someone engages in Ilm Kalam, what kind of knowledge is that? Is it acquired knowledge or just general knowledge?
Dalil Tafsilil. How do you say that?
Tafsili. Yeah. So yeah, it'll be, you will have to use Dalil Tafsili to engage in Ilm Kalam. But then we talk about the other part, not Dalil, but we talk about what kind of knowledge. We talked about two types of knowledge. Ilm al-Daruri and Ilm al-Muktasab. So what kind, this Ilm Kalam is what kind? We said Ilm Daruri is necessary knowledge and Ilm Muktasab is acquired knowledge. What type will Ilm Kalam be?
Acquired?
Yes, acquired knowledge. So this is involves some detail. You have to learn Ilm Kalam, you know. So acquired knowledge is something that you earn, something that you learn, you know, that, you know, you have to put some thought into this. You have to put some time into this, all right? And then when you're dealing with Ilm Kalam, you have to know detailed proofs or Dalil Tafsili, all right? Everybody with me so far on this?
Yes.
Okay, if there's any questions, please, or you don't understand something, let me know. All right, so then Imam Ghazali says about Ilm Kalam, it is the branch of knowledge which deals with the rational proofs of the Islamic creed and with the refutation of the heretical sects, such as the Khawarij. Did anybody know who the Khawarij were?
They were a deviant sect of Islam that they had issues of Aqidah. That's real general. Brother Issa, jump in.
He just stepped away for a second.
Okay.
I was tagging them in.
Okay, so anybody else want to take a stab at it?
I mean, you want more specifically what they believed?
Yeah, I just want to give an just for our people who might not know, just like who were they? How did they come about? Anybody remember the story?
I do, but
I don't.
go ahead and start us off, you man.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I will. All right. So the Khawarij were, there was one time during the Prophet Islam that when they were collecting the war booty, right? And there was a man whose name was Dhul Khuwaisira. Anybody ever heard of him?
Yes, because you told a
Dhul
story.
Khuwaisira. Okay, all right. So when the Prophet ﷺ was divvying up the war booty, this man, he told the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to be just. He said, "I'dilu ya Rasulullah."
Oh,
So the Prophet ﷺ told him and said, "Who is going to be more just than me?" Like, and so then the companions heard this, and they said, "Do you want us? You know, let us do him." You know what I mean? Let us do him. Let me do him, Bumpy. Anybody remember that line? No, y'all remember that line?
No.
Cornballs, but that's okay. All right. So they was basically said, let me get him. They was ready to kill him. And the Prophet ﷺ said, no, don't do it. He said, because from him is going to come a people who will have Islam, all of the outer versions of Islam, but it won't go past their throats.
That's
And
right.
so some of the Khawarij were some of the people who fought against Ali in his Khalifa, and then they started showing up in the time of Uthman. So some of the beliefs that the Khawarij had is that a Muslim was outside of Islam for committing a major sin. They had a problem with centralized authority, and so they were known as renegades. So there's a whole class we have to do on the Khawarij, you know. But these are the people who fought against Ali. And so some of these remnants show up today, and these people, groups like ISIS and all of these people, that if they find a fault with you, you know, they're ready to throw you outside of Islam or even kill you. And as an indication, you know, because we don't want to use this platform to talk about people, but how they use takfir. Everybody know what takfir is, right?
yeah. When you tell somebody that they're not Muslim,
When you
Yeah,
call someone a kufr.
you call them
Yeah.
a kafir, a Muslim.
Yeah,
in
yeah, to
particular.
declare a Muslim a kafir as a disbeliever for an action that they did. You know?
AKA throw them off the minhaj.
Yeah, to throw them off the minhaj. So today they do the same thing that the Khawarij did with takfir. Some of these people do the same thing with bid'ah. You know, so they say that if you do something and it's not according to their understanding, that you're off the minhaj, and it's almost synonymous to saying that your Islam is not valid because it's not according to their understanding. That was the same ideology of the Khawarij, that when you learn their history, you know, whatever they understood, you know, if it differed from what they understood, then you were a disbeliever. And then there was one time, you read the story, I don't want to take too much time talking about it, but just to mention it real quick, that Ibn Abbas, radiallahu anhu, he had went to talk to the Khawarij during the time of Ali because they were renegades and they wanted to fight against Ali. And so they said that the rule is for Allah, and, you know, they held up a white flag. So Ibn Abbas went and he basically used the science of ilm kalam, right? At that time, before it was even the science that we know of today, that he rationalized with them. And so he asked them what their questions were. So they had a question with Ali's rule and some other things. I had to go back and revisit the story. So after he had the dialogue with them, he said that half of them like left that, and then they came back with the, you know, Ahl Sunnah with Ali and them, and then said the other half, you know, they still went about their way. So that has great significance because these people are up until this very day that they find fault with leadership. You know, they don't respect authority. They undermine authority. They try to overthrow leaderships, governments, and all this stuff. And some of these things that you see these groups do, they have a foundation with the Khawarij, you know. And I believe there's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said that the Khawarij are the dogs of hellfire. The dogs of hellfire. So it won't take too much a detailed knowledge, you know, to learn about who these people are today. All right. And I'm actually working on the project now to do something separate to make the parallels. All right. Any questions on that?
No.
Not questions, but these people actually went against Ali, who was a companion of the Rasulullah.
Yeah, not just a companion.
That was his family, like his
Ahlul Bayt.
Yeah.
He's the head of them. Yeah. So, and then also, yeah, this is important. He said that, so you read some of the descriptions of the Khawarij. It said that they would have prostration marks that looked like protruding, I think, like prunes or grapes out of their head. And they had marks on their knees, like knee camels. The camels of knees, like, you know, just a lot of prostration. They would recite the Quran. They would have deep worship. It said that the worship would put the companions to shame. But Islam will not go past their throat. And some of the other descriptions of them is they used to have big beards, they used to have bald heads, and they used to wear short thobes. So, you know, indication gives you something. So just think on that for a minute. But I'll go to the next slide if everybody's ready.
Yes.
Any questions here? All right, so Ilm Kalam goes without saying that this is like knowledge-based stuff. You know, like we just can't jump into Ilm Kalam, all right? Because you have to know Ilm Kalam to get to a level to be able to clarify and articulate and use rational theology to answer any questions, both with Muslims and non-Muslims, you know. But mostly it was to deal with heretical sects. But even in this time, Ilm Kalam is used to deal with people who are atheists and all this kind of stuff, you know. All right, go to the next slide. So other names that we call the Usuluddin or Ilm Kalam is Fiqh al-Akbar. Ilm Usuluddin, the knowledge of the foundations of the religion. Ilm al-Aqaid, which is the plural for Aqidah, and Ilm al-Tawhid. So all of these names are synonymous. All of these names are synonymous. So whenever you see these names, as far as a text or anything, is talking about Aqidah, and we talk about what is necessary to know about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this book, there's a book that's called Fiqh al-Akbar. So by the name, you would think that it's talking about fiqh, because what is fiqh?
Fiqh is understanding.
Yeah. Give me a little more. We had this previously.
Maybe like laws and rulings.
Yeah.
Application.
It's
Lord.
actions of the body.
Yeah, fiqh deals with the ahkam, the rulings in Islam. How we know, you know, how to make wudu. What are the rulings to wudu, the salat, zakat, all of the pillars, right? So Fiqh al-Akbar is a book that was written by Imam Abu Hanifa. May Allah be pleased with him. And so he named it Fiqh al-Akbar, but he's talking about Aqidah. So he's called the greater understanding. And so meaning the greater understanding is the understanding the science of Tawhid, which is the most important science. So Ilm Usuluddin, Ilm al-Aqaid, and Ilm al-Tawhid. And the term that we had was Ilm al-Kalam. So I might ask you on a test, what are some of the synonyms that are related to Usuluddin or Ilm al-Kalam? All right. All right, can I go next?
Yes.
Sure enough.
All right. So now, when we talk about detailed proofs, Dalil Tafsili, it's not as easy as, you know, nowadays we have this, you know, we have Sheikh Google. You know, Tafsili proofs require time, patience, and research that you have to be on a scholarly level. So I put in the second line, the scholarship used to be reserved for the scholarly. Scholarship used to be reserved for the scholarly. And there used to be requirements that a person had.
Sorry.
Scholarship used to be reserved for the scholarly, and there used to be requirements. For instance, the first requirement during the time of the Salaf is that you couldn't even enter into circles of knowledge unless you memorize the Quran. And until you memorize the Quran and they made sure that you understood the Quran, then you could go into other sciences. If you enter the science of Hadith, it could be considered a scholar of the science of Hadith, then you had to memorize at least 100,000 Hadith with the chains, you know. And then some of the stuff that we find ease and comfort of reading now, this used to be the talk among scholars, and the regular people, they just followed what the scholars did. So it was a system, you know. And then when you look at the history of Islam and Islamic knowledge, Allah blessed this nation with great men of knowledge. You know, it's not like nowadays that somebody can go to a university for 4 years or they learn how to speak Arabic and we think that they have some knowledge, you know. So there was a time where scholarly discussion was reserved for scholars. And if you didn't have what it takes to get in, you know, you couldn't be a part of the discussion. You just had to rely on what they did because that was the trust, you know, because that's what, you know, we talk about blind following or the word taqlid. What does the word taqlid means?
Can you say that? What is the word taqlid?
Yeah, what is taqlid?
Just like
they translate as blind follow, but does that really mean blind following?
That's what I was going to say, but I was going to say, yeah, following somebody without really having like a proof, or just.
Yeah, that's one definition. Following somebody and not knowing where they got their proof from.
Is that like not having a qualified scholar who's able to to give you a definitive or a possible explanation of what is meant by something? No,
taqlid is basically is taqlid is blind is translated as blind following, but it's imitation of someone who is an authority of knowledge. So a person who is muqallid, the one who doesn't have the requirements, doesn't have the Quran memorized, doesn't know the aspects of the Sunnah and the rulings of the Sunnah and the different sciences of the Sunnah and the different sciences of fiqh and the 18 sciences that a person is supposed to know, then they are required to follow someone who does, you know. So taqlid, basically, it don't, because people, when they say it's blind following, they say it's like, okay, you just following somebody as if they don't know what they're doing, you know, and you just following them. You know, that's not what it means. It means the imitation of someone who has authority and knowledge. All right. What's the best example that we know from the Quran about blind following? Can anyone think of a story?
Musa and Khidr.
Musa and Khidr. Alhamdulillah. I sent Brother Isa. But can you stop commenting, brother?
Alhamdulillah, okay.
Alhamdulillah. So the story of Musa and Khidr. So, you know, Musa came to him and said, I wanted to learn some knowledge from you. And so he set the ground rules on the agreement that you follow me, don't ask me anything, you know. So Musa broke the rules, you know. He's like, yo, why did you do that? Why did you kill that boy? Why did you could have built that wall, you know, and all those things he said. So he was teaching him a lesson. He was telling him, you're not going to be able to have patience with me. But that whole interaction is an example of following the authority and knowledge. So Khidr was the one who was endowed with the knowledge, and Musa was a student. So his obligation was to follow because he didn't know. And that's what we have to do. So following qualified scholarship. All right. And so we should have an idea of what it means to follow qualified scholarship and who has qualifications. So when we hear people teaching us, you know, we know what's going on. We know to what level we should follow them, you know, because we're not following anybody with our blind follow. We're following people with our eyes open, you know, but we're following people who are trusted in knowledge and are tried and true. And so we should have an idea of who those kind of people are. And most of the times the people of knowledge are the ones they're going to speak up. But in these days and times, anybody, you know, who can grab a book and read some Arabic and, you know, they become like an authority. So we just have to be careful, you know. But we should know what the truth is. As Ali said, you know the truth and you will know its people, you know. When you know what's necessary in Aqidah, then you know who's teaching what's necessary in Aqidah and stuff like that. So, and then we look at the nation of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and all the great scholars of knowledge, and you look at their bios, many of them, especially from the earlier times, you know, many of them would memorize the Quran by the time that they were 10. You know, many of them, they became students of knowledge and people who were given ijazah to teach when they were teenagers still. You know, many of them had extensive training with many scholars, and they had the authority to teach. So, and then he says in this book, going back to the poetry, he said that this is a mukhtasar. In this poem, he said this is a mukhtasar. So we know what that word is: a summary, an abridgment, and which is taken from larger works, usually multi-volumes, for the benefit of the awam. So, for instance, back, you know, in the earlier times, it was scholars that wrote books and read books and conducted circles of knowledge. And the awam just came and listened to the scholars, you know, because that the general folk didn't have the obligation to know all of those detailed proofs, but they have an obligation to know what's necessary for them to worship their Lord, you know. So many times you see a mukhtasar is taken from large volumes of works. So in the last book that we did, Risalat al-Jamia, he said that was a mukhtasar taken from Imam Ghazali's works, which are numerous and voluminous. I think I said that wrong. A lot of volumes. How you say voluminous?
Voluminous.
Illuminous. Whatever word you want to use, but a lot of volumes of books. So, and so that's what a mukhtasar is. All right, any questions on that? And this is very important because as we come across people, you know, everybody now, you know, is on YouTube and all of these social platforms, and everybody's teaching, and sometimes it can become confusing. And this is why you should know what your fard ayn is and know the necessary knowledge that you're supposed to know. And then as you go further in knowledge, you'll know how to listen for certain things. All right. So no one can ever pull the wool over your eyes, because you already know what you're supposed to know. And this is what the meaning we mentioned with Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari mentioned, Imam Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari, is that a person who knows, they become knowledgeable. Even with the fard ayn, we're doing simple text like this, you know what you're supposed to know, and nobody can tell you different. That is one of the benefits of knowledge. All right. Is there any questions on that?
No.
Okay. I'll go to the next slide. Okay, I was supposed to cover these two lines today, but I think we're going to should we continue, or
They the last two?
yeah. Should we continue, or it's just the last two lines? This is a little more detailed, but with your permission, we just go a little bit longer.
Yes. At the bottom.
Sounds good.
All right. Let me go back to. All right. So I'm not gonna take too much time. Let me slideshow. Y'all gotta excuse me for these mishaps. All right. So line 7 and 8 we'll cover real quick. So he says this, back to the poem of Imam al-Laqani. وَهَذِهِ أَرْجُوزَةٌ لَقَبَتُهَا جَوْهَةَ التَّوْحِيدِ قَدْ هَذَّبْتُهَا وَاللَّهُ أَرْجُو فِي الْقَبُولُ نَافِعًا بِهَا مَرِيدًا فِي ثَوَابِ طَامِعًا. He says that this is a poem that I have named the jewel of belief in one God, which I have refined. And Allah alone I hope for acceptance from them, benefiting by it the person who avidly wants reward. All right, so we'll cover these next two lines. All right, so the next one, he talks about the naming of the book in these two lines. And so we mentioned that Jawhar means like a pearl or a gem. And I think another meaning of Jawhar means like a particle, if I'm not mistaken. So in history, the pearl symbolizes like an unblemished perfection. You know, the pearl is a great jewel to have. And so this book, why he called it Jawhar at-Tawhid, it is a poem of invaluable nature. A poem of invaluable nature, because once you get this book down, and maybe we can even take up the task of trying to memorize it, you know, you'll have all you need to know for Aqidah. You know, you'll have all you need to know for Aqidah. So we're going to walk it down, inshallah, and go slow with it and give a lot of detail, inshallah ta'ala. So this is a jewel that he called Jawhar to Tawhid, the divine, the precious gems of learning what Tawhid is. And so this poem that we mentioned, he wrote this poem when he was 17. So this is something that's called didactic poetry, or a form of poetry in which information is communicated in an elegant, flowing, and pleasing form, with the main function not being to entertain but to teach. So when you listen to the poem, and let's imagine that we were Arabic speakers by nature, and we learned this poem, you know, and then there's all these lessons in it. So we're unraveling the poem as we go along with this presentation. So just imagine some poems that you heard or some rhymes, and they were, you know, they were teaching you, even though it was education. So, you know, the greatest rapper of all time, KRS-One, in my view, he coined the term back in the day, edutainment. Edutainment. So it was education and entertainment at the same time. And if you know about his style, which you should know, because the greatest rapper of all time, let me reiterate that, you know, hands down. And so you'll know that his style was always entertaining and teaching, you know, so you learn a lot. And so then he says that he's hoping a reward and acceptance, this book being accepted by Allah, and a reward for passing it on to generations. And so here's a sign that after working with knowledge, conviction, and dedication, this is what his dua was. So he spent his entire life, you know, writing his poem as a young man, you know, and then, as we mentioned, writing his own commentary to it, you know. So, and there are people who have looked at his commentary and then commentated on his commentary, you know. So that's really unique, because many scholars don't write a commentary to their own books, you know. So they'll write, you know, many of the great scholars like Imam Nawawi, they will write volumes of works, but not their own commentary to their own works, you know. Like Imam Nawawi doesn't have a commentary to the 40 Hadith, but there are numerous commentaries that are written on those 40 Hadith that he collected, right? So Imam al-Lakhani is, after putting this work in, doing the commentary, calling it a jewel, knowing that he knew that this was knowledge, having, and we mentioned the week before, he had the approval of his teacher to teach this book, then he's still saying that he is hoping that it's accepted. So that is the humility of true people in knowledge. Like, they put the work in to present to us a mukhtasar so that we can read it now, even in a poetic form, and we can get all that we need to learn Aqidah. And he is hoping that it's accepted. And one of the signs of acceptance is that 500 years later, we are still reading this book, you know, and there are a number of people who are doing this book, you know, and of course you can find people who are better than me teaching it, but you know, we family here. So I'm just taking this time to put my teaching on it, and not my teaching, but my experience in learning this book with a teacher. And a couple weeks ago, I showed you my, that I completed a course in learning this with the translator of this book was Harun Hanif, and along with another brother, with the PDF that I sent to most of you, or I will send to those who don't have it. All right, so that's the end of it. You know, I wasn't going to be too detailed. All right, so any questions?
No.
Okay, okay, how was that class? Sister Shakia, did you find the information difficult at all, or?
No, I don't have the book, but I was just following along and taking notes.
Okay. Did you have any issues and questions?
No, I was
could,
able to follow along for the most part, and I'll be able to Google anything and reference Fahima and Isa, inshallah.
Okay, if you could put your email in the chat box, I'll send you a copy of the PDF.
Okay, just let it go further.
Okay. All right, so we'll stop there. So lines 1 through 8, we already got a lot, and so we haven't even really covered the text. So the text will be going into necessary knowledge. What is the term for necessary knowledge? This is a quick review of today. There's two types of knowledge.
Hello, kalam. No.
No.
Imdaruri.
Duru.
Ruri is necessary knowledge, and what's the other kind of knowledge? Is
Tough.
muktasab,
I'm all off. Okay.
which is earned knowledge. All right. So in that earned knowledge, ilm muktasab, that requires dalil. So what are the two categories of dalil?
Now
Dalil ijmali and dalil tafsili.
What does dalil ijmali mean?
That is the dalil of the fard ayn, like the
That's
dalil
general.
that the general Mhm.
Yeah. So for instance, like you should know, like ayatul kursi covers, Aqidah, Surah Ikhlas. You should know, like, if you know one of the reference about Allah's oneness, what we could find in the Quran, us as general people, we should be able to locate that. Then we talk about the other dalil is called what?
Dalil tafsili.
Tafsili. So that's detail, meaning you have to be able to research, know the proofs, evidences, know the explanations of them, and be able to articulate them for any question. So, and that is something as far as kifaya, and that is reserved for the scholars. We're talking about true scholars. All right. And so, all right then. So next week we'll get into the book some more, cover a few more lines. And we should cover this book. I covered it with my teacher in 15 weeks. So I might have to add like 5 more for us. Not because y'all need extra time. So, like for instance, last week I couldn't do the class, and I got a couple other things. And then we might, depending on everybody's schedule for Ramadan, will we continue through or maybe suspend it during Ramadan? So we'll take a consensus when we get to it, inshallah.
I think you said too we were gonna go back over the essentials during Ramadan, for that section of it, for the section of essentials for Ramadan.
Oh
Fasting.
yeah, we're gonna do another just talking about fasting.
Mhm.
So probably when we get down to how many days is now before Ramadan? It's about 2 months.
Mhm.
Maybe about a month out before Ramadan, we'll start covering, or maybe a month and a half.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions?
No, sir.
Okay, Hanif, you good over there?
Yes.
Shadi?
Yes.
Okay.
Her family's in.
Yeah. I don't know what happened to the other sister. So maybe she'll join us next week, inshallah. Okay, Tayyib. So if there's no questions, we're in there. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept this from us and to give us success in completing the book and to get beneficial knowledge from it and acting by it. I mean, subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wassalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.